going to start the webinar that we planned for today. Thank you very much for attending. It's a webinar we've been preparing for a while, and the situation in the region now is not what it was when we started preparing this. So hopefully we'll have better days coming up. But we did prepare this with a lot of intent and purpose, and we have an amazing panel to join us. So the topic of today is about the transformation in the Middle East region and the impact on talent. We know that in the Middle East, there's a huge effort to transform digitally the public sector and the private sector. There are a lot of investments. There's a lot of infrastructure being laid out and technology being deployed. And this puts a big strain in talent, right? So the talent market has huge challenges in general, and some of them are very specific to the Middle East. Those challenges do have an impact in the way we can roll out digital transformation in the Middle East, and we would like to talk about that. And lastly, we'll just highlight the role of some platforms like freelancer platforms in helping overcome these challenges. So having said this introduction, I would like to talk about our panel. I'm very, very pleased to share today the day with three colleagues, three panelists that are amazing, and we've known each other for a while. First of all, I would like to introduce Dr. Dani Abu Ghaida. Dani is currently the Chief Digital Officer for the region for an IT company called Crayon. Extensive experience over 25 years working on digital and technology transformation projects at a C-level. He's been CIO a number of times, some of them with large telcos, and also global CIO for a design and engineering company. Right? So currently he's well on to the business of digital transformation with huge projects in the region. I mean, as a reminder, right, the impact is estimated in $12 trillion what's going on in the region, right? And business administration doctorate and Master of Science in computer science, and also fellow alumni of Stanford. Thanks for being here, Dani.
Thank you for having me.
Our pleasure. Elena, we have quite a few years of track record. The way I know Elena, great enabler of teams and of innovation. Right? She's currently managing IoT transformation projects. She's a specialist in developing IoT business models and products, putting together diverse teams and very complex ecosystems, which is IoT. For anybody that's been into IoT, it's not just a product, it's a solution that touches into many, many places. Very strong in strategy, very business-oriented, great soft skills to put up that team and deliver in places where it's not easy, right? Like the Middle East. So you have some very, very nice projects out there that you've led. So I think you can definitely share your views on digital transformation and link this to talent and talent needs in the region and the challenges. Thank you for being here, Elena.
Thank you, Sebi.
Glenn, we've been talking a lot around the freelancer movement. And definitely, Glenn is instrumental in opening the debate and trying to shape policies and frameworks around talent, specifically around freelancing talent, right? So he's founder and secretary general of the freelance movement. And Glenn has been working for many years in the public space across multiple countries, lobbying for certain regulations, certain companies, has been touching public sector, corporate startups in this role as an opinion leader, an opinion maker, and shaper. And definitely, he's been dedicated recently, the way we know Glenn, very much focused on freelancers, so he can share his experience on the policies, the trends, a lot of it coming from Europe, but a lot of it are pieces of work and thought that can be exported also to the Middle East. Thank you, Glenn.
Thank you.
And great speaker. Okay, then it's myself. I'm founder, CEO of Outvise. Outvise is one of these talent platforms. We are leading the business tech freelance network or community globally. So we have a lot of presence in Europe and in the Middle East. And yeah, in my past, I was also a consultant. That was quite a while ago. And we do collaborate in the Middle East with organizations such as the FTTH Council, trying to, in our case, promote a learning and development around the fiber space. So yeah, having said that, I would like to, before we go to the moderation panel, I would like to highlight the four main themes that we think make sense to discuss today, and then we'll have questions and answers from the audience, right? So the panel section will try to address four main questions. First one is, okay, what makes the Middle East specifically or different from other parts of the world? Why is it so dynamic? What kind of investments and plans do we have on the table that all these countries are deploying? The second thing we would like to discuss is, okay, so what with these plans, right? We have major hurdles and complexities when it comes to onboard talent, right? Very specific talent models are probably not well defined yet and not well supported by legislation. So there are challenges there, different types of challenges. The third one is, okay, so how do we deal with these challenges and what's the impact that we could expect to bring talent into the region? And lastly, we'll discuss a little bit of the role of certain companies like talent freelance platforms. So before we jump into these four questions, we would like to launch a poll. We're going to ask two quick questions. Please provide your answers. And once we have the poll completed, we'll initiate the first questions. Okay. Okay, when the poll ends, I will take out the presentation and start the discussion. Brilliant. Okay, so we have 65% of people, companies that have considered hiring freelancers to source talent. Definitely around 70% would hire it in the future, and the rest might consider it. Okay, so it seems to be a very interesting way to access talent, and we'll now find out why, right? Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing the presentation, and we'll jump into our discussion. Brilliant. So first of all, we'll start with the questions, and the first one was, what makes the Middle East specific in terms of talent sourcing? And maybe Dani, give us your view on the recent plans, the size of the investments, what's going on in general in the region that requires talent.
Well, as you can imagine, the region is going through a major transformation. While we see a global, people are shying away from calling it a recession or a global economical crisis, but we know the inflation rates globally and what is happening globally. And we look at the lowest inflation rate in the world, which is Saudi Arabia, to my knowledge. And what we are seeing is further investments. We are seeing further ambitions. And we are seeing strategies such as 2030 and many new opportunities that are coming up. Being in the field, working on digital transformation and IT business, we see that we are in a region especially in Saudi Arabia and in United Arab Emirates. We are operating in countries that have ministries of AI and digital transformations. We have authorities that are regulating it and huge investments in cities as big as NEOM, $500 billion company or city. We have the Red Sea development. We have the transformation that Riyadh is going through, as well as many others in the region. So these significant transformations are requiring a major plans when it comes to talent, when it comes to having more resources to deliver on these promises and maybe skill set or capabilities that need to be built. While companies are sometimes, depending on which industry, they want to increase their revenue, they want to invest in bigger projects, they want to also see how they can do it wisely, cheaper, faster, and better. And this is where I believe the key transformation that is happening in those countries are going to take us to the next level. It's a very dynamic environment. It's a very dynamic region, and the opportunities are huge. And definitely the talent, the local talent needs to be augmented with global talent. And this is how this region has been prospering and will continue to prosper in the near future.
Definitely. I mean, on our side, we concur. We see the type of requests we get, RFPs we get, a lot of public sector, a lot of great large corporations pushing for that. Some of them are telcos, and telco has a very specific enabling role, right, Elena?
Yes.
What's your view there?
Well, of course, there is, as you say, a lot of government projects, but mostly on digital transformation, where telcos actually are playing a major role. The governments are really pushing to have a secondary source of income once the petrol dies away, or at least it diminishes, and they want to be presented as a hub in digital. This creates a lot of opportunity in the telco and ICT systems that are now being pushed. The number of data centers of hyperscalers that are going to the region. I mean, every country has its own data center, its own hyperscaler, its own Microsoft and Google personal setup for them, like Saudi, Bahrain, UAE, Qatar. All of them have very big, very large presence of both Microsoft and Google, and sometimes even AWS. This, I mean, when you see like, I don't know, in Europe, there are maybe 3-4 majors in all Europe, and every country here has its own. You see that the bet is really serious. I mean, the investment is going to be serious, and that creates a lot of government projects on smart cities. I mean, the trend for smart cities is very large. Every city in Saudi now seems to having their own smart city, their own personal smart city. Those is already going in UAE, in Qatar. So there are a lot of projects on digital transformation and government-led, which are very big projects, which actually require a lot of consultancy, which actually require a lot of infrastructure and a lot of telco. So for those projects, we see that the region is going to be very, very special in the next future on the sizing of the projects, on the complexity of the projects, because also, well, they have a surplus, so they want to invest in the latest technologies, in whatever is the latest available. So in that sense, for telco and digital transformation projects, I would say that what is being done here, it is very difficult that any other region can go to the same level.
Definitely, and you would know, you've been in the middle of some of these very, very nice projects, smart city related, right?
Yeah.
Great, Elena, thanks. So Glenn, in this context, right, sourcing talents, what options are there? What kind of initiatives or approaches one could consider?
I think in this context, there's, not looking at things in a very traditional 9-to-5 perspective here in terms of attracting the right talent. And what we're seeing now across the board is this more demand for flexibility, more demand for choice within the labor market, and particularly across the board, but also in terms of top talent. And when we're looking at the really high-skilled individuals in the technology space, also in engineering, law, there is individuals who no longer want to have the traditional concept of selling hours to one employer, 9 to 5, 5 days a week, or whatever it may be. There's more of a need for project-based work, both in terms of the flexibility that gives, but also the money that can be earned by individuals with the knowledge and expertise to be able to monetize their talent, and also the fact of learning from these projects as well. Each project that is bought into brings new skills. It can be implemented for other companies and organizations. And I think this is something that we're really seeing as a new trend in terms of attracting the right talent, bringing it in. The employers, whether it's a company or an organization, needs to think slightly differently in terms of being able to access this element to it. And by doing so, to be able to meet the needs and more think about the value that can be created for the organization. It's less about the presenteeism and who's actually name is on the contract. It's how to bring in the individual or the teams of individuals in some cases. That we're seeing a lot of organizations now are putting out terms of reference, whereas we want to achieve this goal. This is the value that needs to be created, and do we need to have an individual or a team of individuals who are able to do this? And the bottom line is efficiencies as well. It's there's a push from the talent, the open talent themselves, but there's also a push from the organizations to be able to get the most out of it in terms of cost efficiencies, the use of space, hiring, how to be able to do this in the right way to be effective, but also be up with the latest digital trends as well in terms of really thinking about rolling this out in a clever and efficient way.
Yeah, I think I always have one figure in mind that there's a gap around 80+ million technology-based positions that cannot be filled globally.
Yeah,
which forces you to think differently about talent. And the fact that you can access talent in a flexible way globally it's so exciting, right? So definitely, I think that trend is here to stay, and there are solutions to finding the right talents. So we just need to learn how to work with this type of talent also, right?
Yes.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot, Glenn. So now that we have the context, huge investments in the Middle East, telco space as a huge enabler, all the countries in the Middle East working hard to transform digitally in projects that are becoming references globally, and that we need to start thinking about sourcing talent in different ways. Clearly, the situation in the region is such that getting that talent has very particular challenges, right? We're still catching up in making it more accessible. So what would you guys think about these challenges, right? Dani, you've faced quite a lot of these challenges in sourcing talent. So have you, Elena. What do you think? What are these challenges?
Yeah, I'll show you my fingers. I've burned them in these challenges. But I would summarize them in few challenges that we face currently. Maybe the biggest one is the skill mismatch, that there are some serious shortages in talent globally, but in the region, because of the investment that is happening, the problem is even bigger. The challenge is even bigger. I mentioned the need for data scientists. Everybody globally needs data scientists, but in this region where investments are huge and there is a high willingness to pay, especially in the kingdom of Saudi Arabia, they would expect you to bring a very skilled talent into the projects or into the initiatives that they are embarking upon. While we are definitely facing this challenge, another challenge are sometimes the legal complexities or things around the complicated labor laws or regulations. Now, while there is a great effort that is being placed to change these regulations and to streamline them through systems, through changes in policy, which are very progressive with a very progressive thinking, the transformation is not going as smooth as we would expect it. There are still some government entities that would really require security clearances. There are still some regulations. Elena mentioned things around cloud or hyperscalers. In Saudi Arabia, these hyperscalers do not have presence as of yet. Google is going to go live on 15th of November with their local data center, but many of the clients would require to have access on site. They need people on site, and they need to get sometimes security clearances to be able to access these sites. Many of the data is on-prem, and these are additional challenges that we see. You need to know and have talent that might not necessarily have capabilities and skills on hyperscalers, but they are working also with on-prem or open source solutions sometimes. Cultural difference plays a major role as well. So there are lots of talent globally, but we know that working in the Middle East is a little bit different. And apart from the cultural difference, sometimes there are language barriers. There are very skilled executives, and sometimes in some government organizations across the region, they will be preferring to communicate in Arabic. They would require even RFPs and deliverables to be written in Arabic, which would add an additional layer of complexity. And the fact that having and getting these complexities working together, the fact that sometimes you might need to involve external companies to partner with you to deliver a certain project, is also adding a burden on cost, which is a withholding tax that you need to pay in, like most other countries in the world. If you're hiring and getting resources from an external company, even if it was your sister company from another region, you would be having those withholding tax. I think these are where the main challenges are. We are seeing things much better than they were 2-3 years ago, and it's only getting better and better. And this is the main challenges I see. I don't know, what do you think, Elena?
Well, I think I share most of your concerns and the challenges that you've shared. I mean, the contradictions, I mean, the essence of the contradictions in the region, I think is you highlighted very well. I want cloud, I pay a lot to have those cloud partners, but then I request it on premise. And then you have all these architects from Google looking at you saying, but why did I come? So you want talent, you ask for talent, you're willing to pay, but then you put a lot of visa requirements that make this talent delay and then makes talent complex, and then you start looking. So in that sense, it looks easy, but then residence is not that easy. Even if, as you say, they're promoting, they're going to, I mean, on the surface, they get a law to promote this, but then there's always requirements somewhere else that have this control. So the contradiction, I think, is an essence of the region. And the second piece is the diversity. I don't think we've experienced diversity until you work in this region, because it's not only that you have to, that you see MENA or that you see the Middle East and you have to have cultural differences with the Middle East, that here you have people working from every single side. I mean, from Philippines to Argentina, all the way through. We're not missing anyone. So that's and working all these people together that have very different cultural references, that have very different responses to when response times, acceptance of feedback, and putting all these teams together to get a deliverable out is really a challenge. And also, I would say a very great learning experience. I have to share. I mean, I always tend to say that diversity is the best and the worst depending on the day. So that will be mostly the challenges. Yes,
I agree. I have to say that the Middle East is probably one of the regions where I see more multicultural and diverse workforce coming in. No? It's any country and
anything,
any type of skill, any type of role. It's coming in. The way these countries have had to adapt in terms of processes and the efficiency to process all of these requests is amazing. And as Dani mentioned, it's improving every year, right? But to your point, there are these contradictions, right? I mean, now this week we managed to get someone from a more difficult country with a visa in 3 days, and we are still waiting after 2 weeks for another one from an easy country, right? And you don't know what's going on, and we need to wait, and they need to have all these permits, as they should, obviously, because otherwise they cannot access the right type of accommodation, right? You need to have these 1-year rentals sometimes that makes things difficult. The custom there is not aligned to the actual flexible needs sometimes, right? But it's a process. You did touch, Elena, you touched on the compliance side, the visas, the residencies, these contradictions. If you want to add anything on the compliance side, feel free. Dani touched upon the costs, these layers of costs, these partners that you know, make things a bit more expensive. So that's a drawback. Glenn, what about your experience in other regions around legal frameworks and compliance measures? What could we learn?
There's a lot of diversity, and I think that, you know, there is no homogenous market in that sense. Everyone, and even not just at the national level, but often at the regional level as well, there's different requirements, particularly when it comes to pay structures. Of course, some parts of the region heavily unionized with minimum wages. Other ones don't have that clear recognition of skills, knowledge, and competence, which is something that needs to be looked at, as well as very different rules, regulation from a labour market perspective. But what we are seeing is the increase in the role of employers of record. This whole idea of using third parties who can stand for the compliance, whether it's the payroll, whether it's legal compliance, make sure that the taxes, social security, these levels are paid. And in certain places as well, it's looking at almost giving the authorization to these individuals. So kind of half employing them, if I can use this word, so that they will be seen as compliant. The third party will stand for all the legal and administrative and financial costs and burden, if you want to put it in that kind of way. And this is something I think that we see is increasing over time, this third parties who are taking on this role, not just in some cases taking over to the payroll, make sure it's done, but more of this legal compliance. So if there are any problems, any difficulties, they sort them out, even to the level if there is any fines for contravening the compliance and the local laws, they stand up for it. And I think recently we're seeing these global players, the likes of the Velocity Global, Hire, these kind of companies and organizations who are almost sort of offering international offerings. So you can set up an operation without the admin and the hassle of doing that. So I think this kind of trend is something that we'll see to get around a lot of these issues, because it's just so complicated, as Dani and Elena have been saying. I think that all regions have the complications, very specific ones, of course, in the Middle East that we need to look towards.
Yes, and compliance is many things, as you mentioned. It's the permits, the residencies, the visas, the payrolls. Sometimes you need to provide insurances. The insurers don't cover certain regions, cover other regions. There's no global insurance that can deal with certain geographies, for example, right? Medical services. Some countries have a social security and you're well covered medically. Others need a private medical service, and the cost levels vary a lot. There's a lot of things to check, right? Companies are not designed to deal with this type of talent, to provide all of this. And this is something that might happen in the future. But until that happens, this ecosystem around it, these players, these third parties play a role.
And I'd say also, just to that point you said, there's almost this need requirement for as much of a one-stop shop as possible in terms of bring all these things together under one framework. If there's organizations who can help out with as much of these as possible, there's certainly the need is there, certainly the demand is there to be able to fulfill this role. Definitely.
Okay, good. So we covered the complexities and the impact of those challenges. Lastly, I want to discuss a little bit around the ecosystem, these third parties, right? What in your opinion, a role of a freelance network or platform, what role does it play, and in which way does it add value to you, people that need to deliver from the business? Elena, what's your view there?
I mean, of course, the platforms can accelerate the talent acquisition. For local companies, for the companies that are working on the countries, they usually have as you said, in these contradictions, they have a high demand and low process. So I mean, even to get approval of a new FTE is a challenge. So usually they actually are willing to hire contractors, freelancers, consultants to cover the needs at least for a couple of years until they're on their feet, until their internal processes pays up. So there's a lot of opportunity in that sense, in the talent demand, in filling up the gaps. And also they would need that talent to teach and to show the new generations, because there is a lot of interest on the government also, that the new graduates actually join the digital transformation and are taught by these expats that come to the country, that the expats leave some imprint into generating knowledge. So on that sense, there is an opportunity, and a great opportunity for velocity, access of talent, velocity of talent to join all these huge projects that are going on, which the local companies cannot really cope with. I mean, because of those contradictions that we've said. So if somebody can solve those problems and bring the talent in, then there is clearly an opportunity here. And the people that are here, or the consultants here, that also need to, okay, they have greater projects, they've solved a project. Now I need the talent here. How do I do it? Because my small company doesn't have the contacts in the ministry or whatever to manage the talent in. So I have this project. So how do I do it? And even on a regional, even if I have the talent myself, as Dr. Dani was saying, maybe I need some local, or maybe some kind of in between that kind of acts as a role, because I need this sensibility to the diversity, to the local government. So all this, how do I manage this team of different skills that I need to get? I think the platforms can help a lot on this one.
Being a platform, one of the things that I would love to see in companies is a role or function that actually helps onboard these freelancers, right? Typically, it's more like, many cases, like a consultant that you're onboarding, and there's no real onboarding plan or support. That would be great. And in that onboarding, the knowledge sharing and the objective set up after a period of time with the expert would be part of this onboarding, right? So we ensure that this talent is hired, but in some way retained and shared. Thanks, Elena. Dani, I guess you wanted to talk about the role in compliance, no? Or legal compliance of the platforms, or any other thing you might want to add around talent platforms.
I think what was mentioned so far is extremely important, and we have to all remember that maybe it's a region in the world where most of the companies have traditionally PROs, so public relation officers that go to government entities and process your visa and help you go through the complexities and the regulations and help you cover the labor law, explain to you what is needed. So transforming from the traditional way of having talent onboarded and brought into companies through the new model of having teams working through a freelance platform is not an easy change. The good news is that we are seeing governments facilitating that, especially, as I mentioned, the largest markets that we are working with, Saudi, UAE, Qatar, and many others. They are putting efforts to facilitate these types of new processes. But there are still access to legal compliance experts, tools, resources, being part of a platform, being part of this freelancer platform that you have mentioned, I think is extremely important to be able to maintain compliance with the regulations and what have you. And to ensure the quality of the talent, I personally believe that having a proper technology as part of the platform that would look at the quality of the platform. We have now lots of things around the buzzwords and the trends of LLM to have, you know, these types of support to immediately screen and do assessments of the various tools. It would help a lot, giving feedbacks and ratings to freelancers that are working on this platform will help a lot increase the value of the platform and will give credibility to the clients that would want to hire people from this platform. And even if there was any dispute, it would help even on helping on resolving those disputes or resolve an issue. So we see lots of value on this. And I think it's just how do you map the current physical experience with the digital experience through a proper platform, and who will be able to crack this nut with its winner takes it all. And I think companies like Outvise are on the right track on this.
Hopefully, thank you. It just dawned on me that you mentioned PRO. And if for everybody that's been in the region, we know what a PRO is, right? But if you're in the region, it's like, what is this? And this is literally a project manager that helps navigate all the administration hurdles to get the visas and the licenses and the permits, right? So, yeah, it's the human factor in those digital processes, right?
Well, also, if I might add, I wouldn't call him a project manager. I mean, it's not the traditional project manager skills that he required. It's a relationship trader.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, the only way to get things done sometimes is, you know, knowing the right people, being there, saying the right things, and yeah, navigating the softies, no? But it's a very specific role.
Yeah, no, I mean, just as an example, there are some roles that trade on the dates. I mean, they have agreements that they can align you with the dates. They can skip the dates on the government because they're friends with the guy and they give him presents so that you skip the queue. So it's amazing. I mean,
yeah, it's crazy. Yes, it's crazy. But as things mature and get more process oriented, then this will be more predictable, right? Which is what we all wish. And going back to the specialization, we also honestly do believe that platform specialization is absolute key. We need to understand what you need, and we need to understand who can deliver it, right? And translate this knowledge into the platform to deliver the right type of expertise. Glenn, what's your anything you would like to add on the right type of strategies from the platforms you've seen out there that should be put in place to succeed in the Middle East, in a region like the Middle East?
I think the big thing is getting first of all, getting the technology right, getting the access to the right people, making it a good role as a go-between. We see that to the big platforms, there are, say, the Adecos, Randstad's this world, they haven't got up to the standard needed. They haven't been able to do the proper vetting, the filtering out of the right kind of talent, because it's a very specific area we're looking at here. It's high skilled talent, specific knowledge, skills, expertise that needs to be brought through. And I think this the filter vetting process is something very important. And you know, we talked about this before, the idea of sort of onboarding. This is absolutely crucial. As the organizations change from kind of a smaller, hardcore of full-time employees, and more freelancers, more contractors, specialists, expert, specific project-based talent that's brought in, this kind of model and a structure to be able to accommodate the competence that's needed is something that's absolutely essential. So this kind of plug and play model for the organization is something that's going to need to be brought in very clearly. And also, we just said as well before, the whole idea of the education of the current or the next generation as well. that there's so many of these changes underway in the labor market in terms of the needs and wants of open talent. But it's not just a case of third country nationals as well. It's really for the locals to be able to be entrepreneurs, to be able to access the digitalization, digital skills that are needed. So themselves, they can be fulfilled, they can take on board new projects in different places, different organizations, and also profit from the flexibility and the opportunities that will be created by the digitalization, but also more open labor market approach.
Yeah, you mentioned the local entrepreneurship, and this is something that every time I go to the region, it energizes me. There's a lot of creative energy out there, a lot of people that see the opportunities, and they want to try it out, they want to embrace, right? Of course, the fact that so many resources are plugged into catalyzing the technology transformation helps. It's the right seeding ground, right? But a lot of local people are creating new businesses and thinking about new business models. And those people will need talent in addition to the public sector and the large corporates, right?
Yeah, but also Eusebi, I just add the fact that in the Middle East there's such a creativity and a period of change and a optimism and a desire to change things. I mean, just sitting not at the moment, but often in a European context where things are kind of slow and wedded to the past and reluctance to change. There's this new wave, this tide of new feeling and development, optimism, and evolution that's underway. And I think that goes hand in hand with some of this transformation.
100%, that's the feeling. And hopefully that feeling remains strong currently, in the near future, and in the mid-long term.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dani, Elena, Glenn, I think we've covered the points we wanted to cover. I'll check if there's any questions that the audience is wanting to share. Okay. Okay, so Victor Arroyo, so first question there is, can you give us some good ideas or tips for businesses that want to hire freelancers in the Middle East and make sure everything is okay and the work is good quality? Okay, well, I mean, Dani and Elena might be able to answer that as tips to source freelancers in the Middle East, ensuring that the guys are good and everything is certified, okay, and according to legal. Anything you want
to... Elena, ladies first.
Okay, so I would say that the very important, because we're working in a multinational environment, is to check the references. So here, reference check is crucial. I mean, it's not optional. It's crucial. Second, what we always do, at least, is that we try to focus on the soft skill as much as the harder skills. So we're requesting, yes, some knowledge that we need and some specific profiles, but we do need to focus on the soft skills and the capacity to adapt and to leverage what is. So that's also so very, very, very important. And third piece, I would say that the onboarding. I mean, that the way we prepare the onboarding is also crucial. I think there's a question after that on this one, so I will cover that after.
Okay, Dani?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and the way I understood it is the tips for the businesses that want to hire freelancers. So I would assume that this is a question that is coming from a business that wants to hire freelancers. I think one of the areas that you really need to look at is, in the innovation world that we need to that we are living in, it's like, really, you need to experiment. You can get it right. Start with small chunks of small projects, low risk. Try to go and experiment working with freelancers, get and be open to failures or learn from these failures, I would say, And then this would help you a lot in the progress of ensuring that you get the right quality. What we have seen working with many of our clients in the region, and also from my previous life, where I have been on the other side of the fence working as in the industry, the way we looked at it is ensuring that we get the right talent by really having scrutinized set of interviews and reviews of the talent to ensure that their quality is good, because the only way to do that is through a rigorous interviewing and scrutinizing process. But at the same time, what I mentioned previously, the platform and digital play will make it easier, because people who are not of good quality will be given bad feedback, and it would be ratings, and this would help you evolve. But in the meantime, until those platforms become mature and advise us on the right track for that, I believe it's low risk, small chunks, experiment, learn, and evolve.
Very good. I think you're both very aligned in these two things. For us as a platform, it's key to work very close to our clients. The way we feedback on the experts is through interviews and projects done. So we try to gather all that information, so this past experience is embedded in what we know of each expert. The fact that you have a platform, in my view, that understands the type of talent you need is also like very important. No? If I was Emirates hiring staff for the flights, I would go to a network that is managing that type of profiles. And if I was IBM hiring technology transformation experts, well, ideally I would go to someone like us, like Outvise, right? So we would talk the same language. The platforms are designed for the same type of skills, and we probably do a better job on that. Great. Hiba Khadir, what type of freelance skills are most in demand in the Middle East right now? I mean, we're talking technology here, but what's your view? What do you see is in greatest demand?
Well, I mean, I think the Middle East is moving from the traditional construction and oil and gas, which were those engineers were highly in demand 10 years ago, and they were, I would say, they occupy the top positions. And now it's going to digital. So as Dr. Dani said, the data scientist is a must, smart cities, digital transformation experts, IT integrators, project managers, all of these that work in this digital transformation ecosystem. Every one of this is welcome. And I would also add, as a soft skills, if you have two cultures, that's much better. So if you have two passports, good. If you speak two languages or three languages, better. If you're Canadian Arabic or something Arabic, much better. If so, the more cultural diversity that you can add to your CV, it's going to help you.
Yeah.
Yep. And I would like to add on this, differentiate between two options that are now currently available. So there is now in the UAE, for example, there is the freelance visa where you can come in and sponsor yourself and work as a freelance. So if you are inside the country, the skills that are in demand are a little bit different than if you're outside the country. So if you're inside the country, you will be able to have access to the data because they know the data would not be leaving the premises, and they can impose security. But if you are planning to work in the Middle East while you're still working from outside, we are seeing that data science and working with sensitive data is not an option, like machine learning and having access to these are not an option, but still clients are happy to work with front-end developers, work with expertise like business analysts who might not get access to sensitive data. They are fine to work with freelancers outside the country. So there's difference between in-country freelancers and out-of-country freelancers.
Good point. Okay, Bob Sorensen is asking, how would you tackle the issue of the successful onboarding, as often the qualitative capacity of HR is limited? How to onboard these freelancers, right? Knowing that HR sometimes has these kind of limitations. For example, putting out hiring demand that cover 4 pages, well, the typical job description that even a Nobel Prize winner cannot cover, right? Okay, so the wish list is like so specific, right? That maybe there's one person there, right? That might fit. Do you have a view there on how to tackle this? I can also pitch in with some of our experience. How to make the onboarding and finding these candidates easier, fitting the traditional HR processes or changing them, right?
Well, on our side, of course, we have the HR processes, but we do take on the business side a lot of time to onboard the candidates. I mean, and we dedicate a special time. And we understand that also when you work in the Middle East, and particularly when you come on, as I said, as Dr. Dani said, working remotely is a different topic. But when you come to the region, you need to understand that it's not as easy as to onboard an European project. So you're supposed to be working the next day perfectly on board or whatever. We understand that this is more difficult, and we actually take the time and the effort to dedicate time to the new candidate. So it's usually midterm projects that are useful when the person comes on site, because they're not going to be working perfectly first week, first month. It will take a while until they really on board. So it's something for less than 3 months coming in country. If you don't know the region, it might be quite challenging. You really need your time to onboarding. That's to me the secret. Time on every part, on all parts.
Agreed. Fully agree.
Yeah, actually, just to add, in your case specifically, the way I know you, right? The soft skills are very important. Those skills that can prove that the person has the right attitude to fit in, navigate the local organization, and absorb what's going on, right? More than the specific hard skills
Yeah.
that are listed, right? I do have to admit that talent platforms typically weight more to the hard skills. And we probably need to do better at the soft skills. But for us, when a client is very descriptive in the soft skills, it helps enormously, right? And then on the hard skills, we need to know which are the mandatory ones and which are the nice to have ones, right? But definitely having the right culture and attitude to insert yourself in this type of organizations where, you know, sometimes you need to, not everything is defined, right? So you need to define it. You need to work together with other people to define it. That's very important. Okay, Nasir Al Saud, how do freelance platforms make sure everything is legal when people work from different places in the Middle East? Okay, I can answer this one. So depending on the engagement, remote, hybrid, on-site, and the duration, you know, there are different requirements in terms of permits and visas, right? Some of these requirements can be managed through business visas for a short period of time, or if you're doing remote and you can then go on site, that can be managed easier, right? A lot of these countries have very efficient visa processes. When it comes to longer term processes, you need to have a residency type of visas and payroll possibilities. So you either have legal entities there that are able to provide that, or you have partners that you partner with. So these are ways to comply from the labor side of things, right? Then, of course, we have tax and insurances. Typically, the platforms need to deal with that in the proper way. So it's difficult because each country has particularities, and the laws are not always the same depending on your country of origin. So sometimes it's more difficult to do certain things depending on your country of origin. So it's not easy at all, but this is part of our job. Okay, Mercedes, what specific skills are needed for government projects? Okay, are the customers willing to hire talent from Telecom or other utilities for this sector? Okay, maybe, I don't know, maybe Dani, you're doing a lot for well, you're doing a lot of oil and gas, right? But I'm not sure if you're doing a lot of public sector.
We are doing lots of public sector, especially the things that we cannot talk about. But with respect to government projects, it's very important to really consider having the teams mobilized working in country. Most of the government entities, although many of them in different regions, as I said, in Saudi, it's different because there's no hyperscalers. Even though they are getting their workloads on the cloud, they will still require access to this data to be limited to people who are working from their countries and sometimes from their premises. So they would like people to be working on-prem. And these skills are often associated with on-prem related skills. So people with hyperscaler experience, for example, Microsoft Azure, they need to know HCI stack because this is the version that they have on-prem, right? So working with containerized solutions, Kubernetes, in the cloud context is extremely important because there are lots of deployments that are happening on Outposts from AWS, on Anthos from Google, on HCI stack from Azure. So having and knowing the skills that are required for on-site deployments are important in government projects. They are willing to hire resources, and we have seen it with many of our resources that were hired into energy, like working with the largest company in the world in the energy space, like Aramco. If we need to get them smart data scientists from where? We need to go and snatch from their competitors, data scientists, which might be very hard. So definitely they are open. Customers are open to cross-industry expertise, and we have seen it, and it proved to work, especially from telco and banking, which are more advanced on digital, and government entities would like to learn from their experiences.
Yeah, we've also found some very specific requirements in some cases, right? I mean, specific government initiatives around, I don't know, culture or cinema. We've seen some of these in Saudi where they require certain experts with that specific background, which is very unique. But in general, I would agree with you. But then depends on the project. They might have very specific need to import certain talent on certain very, very key topics. Robert Nagy is mentioning what kind of references are considered to be significant references for clients, right? When we look for an expert that provides references, what would those type of references be? On our side, for example, what we do, we ask for former employers, business leads, project leads from former companies that can provide references, and we validate those references. In some cases, also other consultants that we trust. And then we do run technical interviews, for example, right? Those are more on the skills, professional references. In some cases, we also need to look into security-related references, right? Criminal records or other kind of data. That's specifically when we are producing visas, right? I don't know if there's any other type of reference that you, Dani or Elena, think might be relevant.
No, I mean, usually the companies would ask you to guarantee that the person is at least who she or he says she is. So
Yeah.
that because I mean, of course, when you work in such a diverse work, it doesn't matter where you have from, whichever country you come. So also the checking of the title is important, and that's also a pain.
True. Yeah, we know how easy it is to just put your CV on LinkedIn and say whatever you want to say. True. That's a very good point, actually. Yeah, thank you. Okay, Dhruv, management consultants, freelancers, what are the key skills and areas of expertise should individual focus on developing to succeed in the Middle East market? Okay, we've answered a lot of these from a technical perspective. As management consultants, okay, we have people that are in our line of business, strategizing digitization, digital transformation projects, which is basically what's the strategy, what's the roadmap, what's the business case. That type of experience is very relevant. Also in launching specific digital business models. We also find ourselves from the business consulting side, people that have launched financial services, people that have launched e-commerce sites or healthcare, that type of. So it's very diverse. All those sectors are becoming transformational in the Middle East. Okay. Okay, I think we covered all the points. Great. Well, it's now it's 4 o'clock Spanish time. So what is it now? 6 o'clock in Qatar or in Saudi?
Saudi 5 o'clock, Dubai 6.
Yeah, cool. Okay, well, thank you very much for joining us, everyone. Glenn, Dani, Elena.
Thank you for having us.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. It's been a pleasure.
Pleasure being here.